Is Amarius Mims really the boomer bust prospect you've been led to believe he is? Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day on YouTube, everywhere you get your podcasts. You can subscribe to the show if you're new. It supports us, which we appreciate, but also it makes it easy for you to find our content when we upload every day. Today's episode, where we'll be talking about Amarius Mims' potential and where his floor really is, and take our first look at the Bengals' undrafted free agent class, is sponsored by Monopoly Go, where you can join your friends on the mobile hit twist on Classic Monopoly. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or on Google Play. James, a lot have written about Amarius Mims, even going back to before the draft, obviously, and his limited experience at Georgia as a boomer bust type player. But now that he's with the Cincinnati Bengals and we're giving him our undivided attention, now that we know that he's a player we're going to be covering for at least probably at least 5 years with the Bengals, we talked about this with Mike Potts. Is he really this boomer bust player? Where is that floor? Is the inexperience really an issue that gives him that bust potential, as some seem to think it does?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, every player has super high risk when it comes to health. And the good news with Mims is we're talking about an ankle that he re-aggravated. And it's not like he didn't practice at Georgia for back-to-back seasons. It's not like he missed a bunch of time in practice and was leaving practice and all of those things. He did all of that. So I don't really think health is a big factor, even though you look at the 8 starts and you think that's why. And then the other element here, when you're talking about a 6'8", 340-pound just freak athlete, is just, does he have the attitude, the right mindset to go be great? And who knows, maybe he doesn't end up being great, but if he has that mindset, given his physical gifts, assuming he can stay relatively healthy, I think we quickly go from, oh my God, his floor is really low, to at least in the mid-range. And we've talked about this, and that's why you mentioned it. We asked Mike Potts about that because, and if you missed it, make sure you check it out. The director of Bengals college scouting, obviously a big, huge factor in all 10 of their draft picks. So this is part of our conversation with Mike Potts. I asked him about Amarius Mims, the high ceiling, and does he have a low floor?
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that he has a low floor, honestly, when watching his tape, because his tape's really, really good. There's honestly not a whole lot that you can nitpick or poke holes in about his tape. And yeah, he only started 8 games, but he played a lot more snaps than your average guy that only started 8 games. He was in a rotation with some high-end, draft picks there that came out last year and previous years on the offensive line at Georgia. So he does have high-quality tape. Obviously, you would like to see it, in more volume. When you're just have more overall tape to evaluate on him, but it's not a guy that's really inconsistent and you just see the flashes and the highs and the lows on his tape. I think he's pretty even in his high level of production when you watch his tape. So I don't necessarily think that he's a low floor, high ceiling prospect. We kind of view him as a high floor, high ceiling prospect.
Big emphasis there on the tape and the consistency on tape with Amarius Mims from Mike Potts. And like James said, full conversation, including like 10 minutes or so on Amarius Mims, is our most recent episode before this one, if you missed it. But that is a consistent point of emphasis from everyone who's watched Amarius Mims college tape, myself included. They're in pass protection in particular, and we talked with Potts about this, is a consistent, in my opinion, refined player for a guy that only played less than 900 snaps in college. And that's where all of the risk, not all of the risk, most of the perceived risk, I think, comes from. You go back to the Bob McGinn quotes with the anonymous scouts pre-draft. And one scout told McGinn that Mims may be the biggest bust in the class because he's only started how many games? That ain't very many, said the scout. That scares the F out of me. And so there are some scouts that are worried about that inexperience. There are scouts, I'm sure, that look at his run blocking, and Mike Santagata has a piece on this over on your SI Bengals coverage page as well, James, talking about the run game growth required for Amarius Mims in certain stuff. But as a pass protector, which is generally the opposite of what you would expect, Amarius Mims is a pretty refined player, and that's what Potts is talking about. I think the tape and pass pro in particular is consistent. And so do you buy the motivation stuff that Nick Saban's talking about, the football toughness, willingness to stay on the field? I don't know. You've talked to him, James. You have an idea of who the person is. You've got a first impression after having that one-on-one conversation. What do you think?
I think he's ready to work. I think he feels like this is an ideal landing spot. And that's part of why I've changed my tune, because I called him a risk before the draft. But you hit on it here. From a pass blocking standpoint, he's there. He's good enough now to play. And what are the Bengals? You just got to admit what you are when that's what you are. They're a pass first team. I think it's a perfect landing spot. If he landed in an offense that wanted to run the ball half the time or more than half the time, and it was just a much different, not drop back style offense, well then yeah, like if he's in Tampa where you got to run it 53 times because it's Baker as your quarterback, or Deshaun Watson, oh, I'm going to get and you got to run it because he's not the guy he was 8 years ago. Well, then, yeah, it changes, or 5 years ago, whatever it is. I think it changes it. But you have arguably the best, certainly in empty, is the best quarterback in the NFL in Joe Burrow. And so you want guys that can allow you to go empty at times, and you feel comfortable putting him on an island and all of those things against these elite edge rushers in the AFC North, especially. And that's where I think a lot of the frustration for fans, you got to win in the AFC North. You got to play like, no, hell no, you don't. You got to get guys that can win on an island. And I think he can do that. And so, like, floor wise, it feels like his floor long-term is Trent Brown, his floor. And that's a hell of a floor to me. And that's not me knocking Trent Brown, because I'm excited to see him play right tackle this year, just because of the physical gifts that he has, assuming that the Nick Saban motivation questions are BS. And it does feel that way. Now, if I'm Amarius Mims and I know I'm going to be a first round pick, am I hesitant to get back out there with that ankle injury? Sure. But guess what? He got back out there after 6 weeks after undergoing surgery. It's not like he sat out the rest of the season and re-aggravated it because he came back a little soon. I think that's in the initial cause of that injury was he got landed on awkwardly from behind. It's not like it was something that was something he could control. It was just kind of a freak thing. So no, I think his floor is a bit higher when you take into consideration the offense he'll be in, where he's playing, this destination where he doesn't have to go out there right away. May end up playing by week 4, who knows, but doesn't have to go out there right away until he's ready. I think it makes a ton of sense and fits really well.
And you talk about the AFC North fit and the things you have to do to win in the AFC North. One of the things you have to do in the AFC North to win football games is block TJ Watt, block Myles Garrett, block these freaky edge rushers that exist in the AFC North who will challenge, I'm sure, Amarius Mims the first time they see them. The Cleveland Browns are going to walk Myles Garrett over to that side of the field, even though he plays a lot of right defensive end in their defense. They're going to bring him over the right tackle when Amarius Mims is making his first start. They're going to test the kid. They're going to see how it goes. And Mims has the physical traits to be up to the challenge, but not very many people can block those freaks in the AFC North. There just happen to be a lot of really good edge rushers in the AFC North. He also has the size and the strength and the athleticism when he puts it together, if he puts it together, I should say, to be a really good run blocker. It's not like that's a physical limitation. It's just he needs to catch up, I think, on the mental aspect of the game, get more experience, get used to playing with the guys he's going to be playing with, and get used to the scheme that he's going to be a part of for a long time, most likely in Cincinnati. So from that perspective, I think you have to discuss it as a fit as well. Is there risk? Of course there's risk. Is there more risk than other prospects in the NFL draft? Maybe marginally because of the inexperience, because there are some questions about his ability to stay on the field long-term because he's never had the opportunity between a stacked offensive tackle depth chart in Georgia to the ankle injury. But it's possible that the risk is a little bit overblown and we need to be scaling that discussion back a little bit and then instead focus on the player and we'll be able to do that starting in rookie minicamp coming up later this week. We also have some undrafted free agents to talk about, James. We'll get through that list and whether any of them have a chance to make the team coming up next. This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL. And if you're following the NBA and you're realizing that the Minnesota Timberwolves actually are really good and you really like their chances to get out of the West, well, maybe you want to go place a bet over on FanDuel. Maybe you want to stick to football. You want to look at those futures for winning the Super Bowl. You want to place your early bet on the Cincinnati Bengals that are currently tied for fourth with the best odds, fourth best odds to win the Super Bowl this year. Well, on FanDuel right now, you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. $150, win or lose on your first bet. You can bet on everything from the NBA playoffs to the NHL playoffs to football futures on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
Today's show is also brought to you by Schultz Jewelers. Mother's Day is almost here, which is why you got to get the Schultz Jewelers. And they have a wide selection of sterling silver, gold-filled, solid gold bracelets. And maybe you want to get your mom a bracelet with her birthstone. They can get you covered there. And it's quick, it's easy. And one of my favorite parts about discussing Schultz Jewelers is the atmosphere that you're going to walk into. Matt Schultz, one, is a diehard Bengals fan. So if you're listening to Locked On Bengals, guess what? You're going to be right at home at Schultz Jewelers. Two, he's from an education background. So he's going to be able to educate you, whether you're looking for that perfect engagement ring, whether you're looking for that perfect Mother's Day gift, or just something to tell her that she matters to you and that she's special. Schultz Jewelers is a modern jewelry store. They have unique custom designs, top-rated permanent jewelry. There isn't anyone like them. So check them out today at 2202 Dixie Highway in Fort Mitchell, just 5 minutes from the bridge into Kentucky, or check them out online at schultzdiamonds.com. That's SCHULZ diamonds.com. We all know the Bengals strive for perfection. Schultz Jewelers does too. Because when it has to be perfect, it has to be Schultz Jewelers.
Let's talk undrafted free agents, James. We've been waiting for this list to kind of crystallize, and these signings are not official. They probably will be before rookie minicamp later this week, Thursday, Friday. Hard to say what day exactly these guys will put pen to paper, or even which of these guys might be camp tryouts. We're not exactly sure. I don't think about those yet. A lot of times there are guys that are reported as signings, and then they later turn out to be tryouts. But want to talk about these in terms of their ability to make the roster or even practice squad in some cases where the Bengals are pretty deep. And let's start with quarterback. Let's start with a position that's very clear as to whether or not they're going to make the roster. Rocky Lombardi, one of the greatest quarterback names you could imagine, is the Bengals college free agent signing at quarterback, played his football at Northern Illinois. He joins Logan Woodside as the practice squad candidates on the Bengals roster behind Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. No real shot to make the roster here, but man, when you're looking for a practice squad quarterback, is he on the roster right now? I'm not so sure that the Bengals have their practice squad quarterback for the year yet, but maybe it is just going to be Logan Woodside, a guy who has spent time in Cincinnati before.
Maybe, or maybe it's going to be Rocky Lombardi, who, man, looking at this, he's got a little athleticism to him. He's got runs a 4.7. All right, runs a 4.7 according to the Beast. And yeah, you never say never. Now he's older. He's older now. He's Jake Liscow's age, pushing 26 years old. So he might be Logan Woodside's age. How old is Logan Woodside? He was in the Marvin era, so he's got to be 30. He's got to be 30, right?
Yeah, he's been around for a while now.
29. So there's like a 3.5 year gap. It's just funny with this, with the COVID stuff. But no, to your point, these two will battle. They will have a quarterback on the practice squad, and maybe it isn't one of these guys. Maybe it is. I thought the Logan Woodside signing was weird. I'm not going to lie to you. Threw me off. Wasn't ready for it. And they did it. It was buried with the extension for what's his name? Why am I forgetting him?
I don't even remember when it was announced exactly. I don't think we covered Logan Woodside's return, so I'm not sure who it was because I don't remember when it was.
We didn't. Yeah, the Beng. Are you serious? Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. I forgot his name for a second.
Oh,
You're
Jake
contagious with your
Browning.
name. You don't know when. They buried it with that. That's when they signed
I
him.
see.
So
Okay.
obviously he's battling for a practice squad spot. We'll see if he's if he's going to push for that. But not shocked that the Bengals added a quarterback as an undrafted free agent. We knew they probably weren't drafting one, though, when they signed Logan Woodside. I think that kind of directed them down that path.
I think they could have still drafted one, but they didn't, and that's okay. He'll have a
No,
chance to make.
not after Browning signed a 2-year deal. Because if you drafted one, Browning's under contract for next year too, so he's your backup for the next 2 years. So I don't think that they were going to draft one at that point. Not necessarily because of Woodside, but because of Browning.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you see teams take those day 3 swings at quarterback, but I guess in that sense you're correct that it's not a huge surprise. He'll have a chance to make the practice squad. I think it will be challenging. I'm not sure the practice squad quarterback is on the roster right now. Like I said, these are very different styles of quarterback than Jake Browning and Joe Burrow. I think that's interesting, and they will round out the Bengals quarterback room for the foreseeable future. Let's talk running backs. This is a spot where we thought they would use a draft pick, James. We thought they maybe could go a little bit more high profile with some of the undrafted free agents out there. I in particular was watching the Georgia running back Kendall Milton to see where he would land. He does not land with the Bengals. I think he ends up in Philly. They instead sign Noah Cain and Elijah Collins. Cain, 5'11", 220, listed from LSU, a 5-year player, transferred from Penn State to LSU in 2022. And Elijah Collins, listed 6 foot, 220, Michigan State for 5 years, and Oklahoma State most recently. Neither of these guys played a lot in their most recent year. Both of them are a little bit bigger. And out of all the positions on the roster, this is one where if they wanted to keep a 4th running back and one of these guys really impressed them, you could see one of them sticking.
For sure. This is a prime spot when you paint the picture for an undrafted free agent to come in, impress throughout rookie camp, throughout the offseason program, into training camp. And then if you have a good preseason, you might look up and be on the roster. This is the one area, obviously punter. And we've mentioned him. He's the one that we have mentioned. But outside of that, running back is the most likely. And I'm not saying it's likely, but it's never likely when you're an undrafted free agent. And so Cain and Collins, they have a shot. And I agree with you. Dylan Johnson was another one, another undrafted. Someone I thought the Bengals would consider round 6, round 7 because of his production, his size, all of those things. Well, he hit the undrafted market. And that's another guy where it's like, man, that would have been nice to have because it's easy to see the path for a player like that who did produce at that level make the team in that running back room.
Yeah. And so we'll see if either of those guys are impressive players. They, along with Chris Evans, vying for a potential 3rd running back spot. You could probably throw Travion Williams into that mix, but it seems like there's a little bit more trust there with Travion Williams. We'll talk more about these roster battles, of course, as training camp approaches. At tight end, they draft 2 guys and sign a college free agent anyway. Cam Grandy, Illinois State. I think probably the hardest path to the roster, one of the hardest paths to the roster here, unless there are a litany of injuries. But he is currently 6th on the tight end depth chart behind the drafted rookies. I think an uphill battle there.
Yeah, but path to be a practice squatter, which if you're Cam Grandy, that's probably it. And because of the depth tight end wise, you're like, all right, well, who am I battling for a practice squad spot? The rest of the NFL, of course, but you want to show the Bengals that you deserve to stick. And so if I'm him, I'm feeling pretty good about it because those other 5 are probably making the team. So you might be able to sneak your way onto the practice squad.
And at, I think 6'5", 260, if I'm seeing this right. I'm trying to check on NFL.com. 6'4", 255 are the official measurements. He had 63 catches for 617 yards for Illinois State in his most recent college year. Again, I think a little bit of an older prospect, but a path to the practice squad for sure. I think no question there. And James, we have quite a few more college free agents to talk about. We're going to have to speed up a little bit here. We'll finish the show with some more of these college free agents and their paths forward coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We got to pause and tell you more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You talked about that at the start of the show, but there's so many good things in this game that we have to tell you about. Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get, from unique stickers that you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new pieces to travel boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. And Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. There's always something new, whether it's timed events that help you win big, massive multipliers for everything that you win, or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free in Google Play or the App Store today. Game on with Monopoly Go.
More college free agents, James. Let's keep going with Eric Miller. Most recently at Louisville, also played 4 years at Purdue. A very experienced offensive tackle with questionable grading, maybe a little bit light at 305, listed at 6'7", probably about 6'6", around 300 pounds. There's a practice squad chance here.
No, he's
I think
6'7.5". You got to get your beast out, man. 6'7.5", 311.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking at another resource to find experience and where they played, because a lot of these guys are transfers and older. But I'll let you do the measurements. That's great. Good to know you've got the beast available.
The search function is beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. College free agent, offensive tackle, almost certainly destined for the practice squad. He'll be competing with, the Devin Cochrans of the world for practice squad spots, but it's not like they have a ton of tackle depth competing for practice squad spots on this roster right now. So a pretty good chance for him to land there if he shows up and works hard and does things the way they want him to do things in camp.
Yep, no doubt about it. And has the height, certainly fits the Cincinnati Skyline nickname. If you're looking for that, could add a few more pounds. I'm sure Frank Pollock is already thinking about that in this Bengals coaching staff, even though the signing isn't official. But no, fits the measurables. You could certainly say that. And you look, the arm length, not super long or anything, and that's probably why he's in that undrafted range, but still 33 5/8 is solid for an offensive tackle. So you get to 320, 325, and you feel pretty good about Eric's chances of being a practice squatter. And I'm not saying he'll get to that between now and camp, but he might. You have a few cheese conies, few three ways. It's easy to get there.
The practice squad for the offensive line right now is like, if you had to project it, Nate Gilliam, interior offensive line, Jackson Kirkland could stick around again, Devin Cochran could stick around again, and Eric Miller. And outside of that, they're former draft picks that are, maybe Trey Hill would go to the practice squad, maybe Deontay Smith, but hard to see many of those former draft picks landing on the practice squad. They might end up just being released. Some of them might get claimed by reclamation project kind of waiver claims, but some interesting battles there in the offensive line room that we'll be watching in camp. And at wide receiver, one of the more interesting college free agents, was one of the more challenging paths to the roster, where there are 5 guys behind the 6 that you would assume are ahead and leading the pack for roster spots. Cole Burgess from SUNY Cortland and Trey Mosley, the Bengals undrafted free agents and wide receiver.
Yeah, 2 guys that, you're right. It's a tough shot. Cole Burgess is interesting. You just, measurables wise, certainly looks the part. SUNY Cortland, so you're talking really, really small school. But man, I've seen some clips. Have you seen clips of him on social? I saw a few clips of him, and I'm like, oh, caught my eye a little bit. So got to do a little more homework. But that's the one that I certainly have my eye on, because he's so under the radar, given where he went.
And great athletic testing. Same school, by the way, as Dan Pitcher. Maybe a little bit of SUNY Cortland connection there, giving him a chance.
I mean, 4.45. That's Jermaine Burton, just to give you an idea. He's 6 foot tall.
Do you
192.
have the RAS? Because
I just have his 40. I have his 40 time.
It was a very high number. I've got it here. It's loading. It was a 9. And a lot of that is because he was a little bit undersized, but the 40 was good. The jumps were 99 percentile jumps with a nearly 42-inch vert and 11 plus foot broad. So some explosion in Cole Burgess, just under 6 foot at 192, and 21 reps on the bench press at 192, 6 foot. That's pretty impressive as well.
That is good. Yeah, he's listed at 6 foot in the beast.
Okay, so just a hair under with whatever measurables Kent
Either
Lee
way.
Platt has for RAS.
Either way. Maybe he grew between his pro day
Yep.
and whatever day. You never know. At
Early
24.
20-year-olds, they're out there growing. That's
Is he
what
early?
they do.
Mid-20s.
Mid
Growth spurt.
20-year-olds. Oh,
Watch out. I'm gonna catch Amarius Mims in height soon.
yeah.
Growth spurt. Early 30s. You didn't know.
Maybe you'll need a step stool instead of whatever you were standing on for that.
That's what it was. It was a stool.
Well, the little step stool instead of the full stool,
Yeah, because I had to bend down a little bit. Yeah, but a lot of people probably won't. My one-on-one with Amarius Mims, I tweeted it out. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, good context there. So Cole Burgess, I think the more interesting to me of the wide receivers. Trey Mosley did play at a D1 school, finishing
No doubt.
At Michigan State, playing 5 years at Michigan State. He had 1,400 career receiving yards, 10 career touchdowns in the Big Ten, so probably should be getting a little bit more attention too as a guy who played at a big school, but a bigger school certainly. But the athletic traits for Cole Burgess are interesting. On the defensive side of the ball, James, Justin Blazek on the defensive edge from Wisconsin-Platteville, another high-end athlete that went under the radar at a small school. Another Wisconsin player on the defense, not Wisconsin-Platteville, but Wisconsin Badgers. Maema, Njongmjeta, linebacker, a bigger body linebacker, a guy that could be a type of linebacker they don't really have on the team. And I actually think there's a decent chance for him there if he shows up and is really impressive in a goal line package, for example, because he would be the bigger body downhill thumper. And the Bengals a little bit undersized with their first 4 guys at linebacker between Pratt, Wilson, Davis Gaither, and Joe Bacci. So I think there is a chance there. Aaron Casey, the other undrafted free agent linebacker. Any thoughts on these guys in the front 7 before we get to the DBs?
No, keep going. I do think that they have a shot, though. There's an opening because they didn't draft any. So there's a shot.
And Justin Blazek, I think, a very clear path to the practice squad, a guy that could develop. And I think from what I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong here, did have a pretty impressive athletic profile for a smaller school guy. And it's always interesting when you have that kind of athletic trait profile with an undrafted free agent. In the defensive backfield, a bunch of guys that have mixed experience between safety, between slot corner, between playing in the box, and PJ Jules and Michael Dowell. Dowell from the Miami University up the road from Cincinnati, and PJ Jules, Southern Illinois. Both guys have that Dax Hill versatility and that Dijon Anthony versatility where they've played corner, they've played in the slot, they've played some safety. Interesting that the Bengals continue to add that type of player even as college free agents.
Look at you. You're saying Jules has a chance to beat out Dax Hill. Don't do that. Don't do that now. I hear it. Oh, they got the same style. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I'm just kidding. It is interesting, and what I think it is it's pretty simple. Let's take as many stabs at finding the next future nickel, as we can. Whether it's Dijon Anthony, whether it's one of these guys. Maybe it is Dax Hill. I think in a perfect world, the Bengals are like, oh, Dax Hill can play outside, and Dax is going to be an outside corner. I think in their head, that's the hope at least. And who knows? If let's say he has a good camp and they feel good about him at outside corner, do they extend Mike Hilton for a year? Would Mike Hilton want to do that? I don't know, but I just throw that out there as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm missing anyone besides Lance Robinson here, the Tulane corner, the outside corner that they signed as a college free agent, had 4 picks and 5 pass breakups most recently. He was a 6-year player starting his career at Kansas State, finishing his career at Tulane. An interesting outside corner prospect and a guy that, honestly, when they found DJ Ivey late last year, gave me some confidence in their ability to find intriguing outside corner prospects late and as undrafted free agents. And so because of that, and primarily because of that, interested in seeing him at camp as well.
No doubt about it. I thought that last year they nailed it in round 7. Can they do it again? We'll see. I will say this. We haven't mentioned Austin McNamara. Obviously, we talked about him on an earlier pod, but he does have the best odds. Just for those one, I'm sure people are like, oh my goodness, best odds of any of these guys of winning the starting job because it's him versus Brad Robbins. I think we'll, on a later show, discuss that battle a little bit or preview it because it's as weird as it is. I know it's punter. As weird as it is, though, that's a really big topic, I think, and one we'll be having to cover because there will be interest there throughout the offseason and certainly in training camp.
We're at the point where there's punter thirst with Cincinnati Bengals fans. They're sick of seeing 40-yard punts, and they would like, I think, to have a good punter. And Austin McNamara, according to the punt analytics guys on Twitter, would have been the number one punter in last year's class, was the number two punter for them this year. They said the top four punters of the class this year would have been the top punter last year. And so that means they like the top four punchers this year, including McNamara, more than they liked Brad Robbins coming out of school. I think there's a real chance there. That will be an interesting battle, but you're right. Maybe should have started there as the most likely to make the team is Austin McNamara.
I think that's a whole segment. We wanted to throw some shine at all these other guys that haven't gotten a lot of attention. We'll get to McNamara. We promise.
We will talk McNamara in the future and break that battle down. There's two shows now for McNamara where he's been kind of the last thing we talked about. For everyone who gets through the entire episode, you've heard us talk about McNamara twice. For everyone who doesn't always make it to this part of the show, we'll talk about it in greater depth on a future show. Until then, that's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.